Burnette's been a real good friend of MIS over the years, so we really appreciate it. So, on behalf of our speakers, Lliam Holmes, Scott Pressimone, and Matt Park, thank you all for being here today. You will have an opportunity to ask questions of each of the speakers after they speak and share their experience with AI. And then after all three have spoken, we're going to bring them all up here and have a panel discussion where you can ask questions. So please don't be shy about asking questions. We might even have some gifts for those of you who participate with us. So, all right. So artificial intelligence has been a topic of conversation for many, many years now. Back in 2023, some of you probably remember, Lliam spoke at our annual Tech Exchange event about the emergence of AI and how it was going to be the next big thing to change the way we do business. So much like the internet was back in the 90s. So here we are 2 years later, and many of us are still struggling with how we're going to use AI in our own businesses. So we know we need to start, right? We need to get on board so that we're not left in the dust by our competitors. But where do we start? In conversations that Lliam has had with many of our clients, he recognized that many of us and many business leaders are still just trying to figure it out. I want to emphasize that we are not selling AI tools. Our goal today is simply to share ideas, the challenges and mistakes that we've made along the way, in hopes of providing some inspiration for you all, okay? So hopefully we can learn from each other and create a community of like-minded people that simply want to take advantage of everything that AI has to offer. So with that, I'd like to invite Matt Park up to introduce himself and kick things off.
Thank you so much. So when Kevin first said, hey, Matt, they're looking for people to be on a panel about AI, I was like, we don't do AI. And I was like, wait a minute, we do. Like I started thinking about it. It was really crazy, all the different things once I really started thinking about what we use internally and what we also are using with our clients. There's a lot of it happening. I thought back to, on the way over here, I was thinking back to when I was in college. I went to Vanderbilt and I was an economics major. And one of my summer jobs was to be a research assistant for a master's professor in the master's department to do a book called The Third Wave. His idea was that, we went through the agrarian revolution, the industrial revolution. At that point, this is dating myself, I'm sorry. This was the technology revolution, the internet revolution, and how it was going to change things. It was the third wave. Well, I was thinking about that, and I'm like, now he would need to write a book called The Fourth Wave because this is it. And the reality is that, again, when I was thinking about what I was thinking with Kevin is, I don't think about it because it is such a big part of our business that it's already here. It's not even like the next wave. It's already here, it's there, and if you're not using it, then you're behind, right? That's kind of the reality of it. So that's kind of how I want to lead off things. I've been in the copy or print business for 20-something years. And you would think that our industry is the old stodgy industry, right? We're about as old and stodgy as you can get, right? Make a Xerox of this for me. But we've really had to advance as well, and there's a lot of things that we're using as well. I do tell my sales reps to be a little wary of using AI because we have one sales rep who loves to use AI to say his emails, and it sounds nothing like when he shows up. And I'm like, yeah, you might want to kind of tailor that a little bit so that your email doesn't say, I was hypothesizing on the da-da-da-da-da, and then you walk up saying, hey, buddy, how you doing? I'm like, little bit of a disjointed thing there. So I'm going to go ahead and advance here and just kind of look at some of the things that we do. Again, I kind of already mentioned we're kind of an old school industry, as you would think, but really we're using a lot of AI. So we do office equipment. That means copiers and printers. That's software around copiers and printers, basically anything that deals with an image, right? Whether that's locking down your copiers and printers, whether that's taking in documents with document management. We're going to talk about that in a little bit and how that ties into AI. One of the things that we've actually done is we work with interactive panels in the school systems. We also do put these in businesses like this where it's touch screens and they go in conference rooms and things of that nature. But one of the things that our vendor in that space has done is for K-12 environments, they have an AI lesson planning tool to where a teacher can say, I need a lesson on algebra. And they'll say, okay, well, how detailed do you want it to go? Do you want it easy, medium, or hard? Okay, and they can choose that. And then as they're being prompted with these questions, it actually builds out a lesson plan for them to use with their students. And then they can email that to their students or use it on the interactive panels, et cetera. So not as much of an application here, but that was the first thing I thought about where we are using AI is helping to enhance the experience of schools. And if you guys have kids, you guys have probably gotten the warning letters from teachers and whatnot of saying, hey, make sure your kids are doing their own work and they're not trying to use AI, because we've got ways of figuring out they did use AI, right? So I've got a kid at Tech right now who's a junior. I've got a senior in high school. So they both have been warned by me and, of course, by the schools, make sure you're doing your own work type of thing. So the classroom is obviously a really big area. And as I think what's important for us as business leaders to know is that as these kids are using it, they're going to expect to use it in your businesses. So as you're looking at hiring people, you better know what you're talking about, because they're going to want to use it as well. Okay, they're already using it in the classroom, and to learn, you've got to be prepared for them to come into your workplace and want to use the same tools. And if you're not using those tools, you're behind, right? So it's something that where the classroom tie-in, I think, is really pretty important. Our dumb copiers also have some AI built into them to where they're going to actually start learning what buttons you push, right? So we can turn it on, turn it off to where it says, okay, when they walk up to the copy, they're doing two-sided with a staple, I'm going to just put that at the top of the screen, right? It's no longer scroll through a bunch of screens to find what you want. So even those dumb, antiquated copiers are actually leveraging AI to learn what you're doing, okay? The biggest area, though, that we're seeing use for it with our clients is in document capture and document management. You know, things like workflows and approvals, you know, taking invoices in and things like that. So moving on to this, then I'll come back to the document management. Print management's a big deal for us, right? Obviously, we sell copiers and printers. Well, what goes with that? Print drivers. Be able to print remotely. I have a hybrid workforce. I have multiple offices. I'm moving from office to office. How do I get the right printer on there, right? You know, we've all walked by copiers and printers and seen paper just sitting there for days. There's a recycling bin right next to the copier because people forget stuff or they leave it there and you just throw it away and it's just wasted money. We also have had the issue where we walk into a new building and I want to be able to print, or I'm a guest and I need to be able to print inside of an environment. I'm a vendor and I'm on a guest network, but I can't print. So some of our solutions that we talk about around print management use AI to route those documents to the appropriate printer or copier and says, okay, where is Matt now? Oh, you're in this building. Okay, we're going to load these 3 printers for you automatically. You don't have to look and say, well, what was that printer? What was that printer? Can somebody help me load my drivers? Because we've been able to build it on the back end, and then AI lets the print job take the most appropriate path to the right copier, whether that be with security, with a pin or a badge to release it, or if it just prints out as well. So that's another area where we're using AI, is because the software is we're getting out of the print server business, right? A lot of people used to have print servers. Now we're able to actually use desktops and laptops inside your environment, and the AI is taking which laptop was seen last, which laptop is online the most, so that I can actually replicate that print job there to retrieve it if you shut down your laptop, right? So there's some AI in there. So Papercut is one of the solutions that we use for that, but that is definitely an AI aspect to that, is print tracking and then user deployment as well. But this is the biggie for me: document management and content. So I have a document here maybe, and it's an invoice. Well, historically, I might scan this invoice and I might keystroke it. I would say invoice number, dollar amount, date, right? Well, that's very inefficient and people hate doing it, and it's very tedious, right? So, yeah, I did that. So, I see you. The wind the air just came on. All right. That was AI saying I was full of hot air, I guess. So what we're used to seeing is that a scanned image comes through with just Xerox copy or Ricoh copy or Canon copy or whatever, and then a bunch of letters, right? Then you got to right click, rename, drag and drop it, move it to the right place, right? It's really an annoying process. What our clients have been telling us lately is that they're no longer getting physical invoices. They're coming in via email, right? They still get some physical invoices, but a lot of them are coming in via email. Well, I don't want somebody to have to monitor that inbox, open the document, categorize it, put it in the right place for the next person to then work on that document, okay? It's a very slow process. There's a lot of human error, obviously, in the place. That's what we hear a lot of with AI, is we're eliminating human error. Well, AI has errors too. But what we used to then be able to do is say, okay, Mr. and Miss Customer, here's your error. Here's your invoice. I'm going to map your invoice to say your invoice number is always there, your vendor name's there, your dollar amount's there. And they're like, yeah, but I have 500 vendors. and all their invoices look different. Okay, Mr. and Ms. Customer, what are your top 10 vendors? And do they do about 80 or 90% of your business? No. Shoot. Yes. Okay, cool. I can copy those 10 or 20 vendors and build out some profiles for those 10 or 20. We've at least handled 80 or 90% of your problem. You still got 10 or 20% you have to deal with, but it is what it is. Well, now what we're able to do is actually go in using AI and say, hey, AI, expect an invoice. And we have taught the AI to say, hey, when I see an invoice, I'm looking for words like purchase order, like invoice number, like, dollar amount, like date. I'm looking for things, and it actually learns your documents without me having to build out forms to learn your documents, okay? So now I can go into a client and say, you know what? I don't care what your documents look like. I don't care how many vendors you have. AI can handle that, and guess what? It's replacing people and letting people do more mission-critical jobs in that organization. One of my clients, I went in there, they were doing 10,000 invoices a month, all right? They had 6 people doing that. They now have 3 people doing that, and they're doing 20,000 invoices a month. Those other 3 people didn't get let go. They got put into more useful jobs that they were more excited about, that brought more value to the company because now they're more in customer service and sales versus accounting, and it streamlined their process, all right? So, and the cost of it and theirs was less than the cost of 1 full-time employee annually. And they replaced 3 and doubled the workload, okay? So it's here, it's real, and that's one of the areas that is really exciting for us is that any kind of document you can imagine, whether they're coming in electronically, whether they're coming in physically and they need to be scanned in, that's what we see a lot of opportunity in, and where we're seeing our clients really thrive is taking documents and no longer having eyeballs on them to actually keystroke things and put them in the right place. It's actually having AI take them and categorize them, put them in the right place so that you can find them. And then onwards from there is workflows, right? Is who approves the document? Is it automatically approved if it's under $500? Cool, it can be automatically approved. If it's over $500, it goes to Kevin in the back over there. If it's over $5,000, it goes to this person. We've got workflows as well. So those are really the things that we're seeing in the marketplace. And again, like I said, when Kevin and I first started talking, I was like, we don't really use AI, but yeah, we do. And it is everywhere. One other thing should probably save it for the discussion, but one thing I'll also caution people is if you are joining a Teams meeting or a Zoom meeting and you let that AI bot in there, I told our sales team, Kevin can attest to this, I sent an email out, I said, guys, if you let the AI bot in there, don't say anything that you don't want to be recorded because the customer will get a transcription of that, and don't say, oh, this person's always late, okay? Because it's going to be in the transcription. So buyer beware, so to speak, with AI, especially as it relates to video conferencing. So that's really all I had to cover. I just wanted to kind of give some highlights of how we're using it, how our clients are using it, and what we're doing with AI in the marketplace. So, yeah.
Jen.
Did anybody have any questions specifically for Matt?
So in cases where we have a little bit of extra time, you all are welcome to ask questions now. We will also be asking questions at the end as well. But to your point, if anyone has a question now for Matt, please go ahead.
I had a question. You were mentioning your client that was able to take, they had 5 people doing a job and they were able to take 2 and leave them out of positions. Did that client have pushback from those employees?
No, because those employees hated their jobs, right? They were it was a tedious job. It was just a job, right? And so those are the types of employees that are going to leave for $1 an hour more or 50 cents an hour more, and then you got to train somebody new, right? That's the other big problem that people think about is that if I have these people in these mundane jobs, and they're looking to go somewhere else, it doesn't take a whole lot for them to move. A little bit better health insurance, a little bit, if $1 or $2 more an hour or whatever, a little bump in their pay, a little bump in their vacation, then all of a sudden it's not even the loss of that employee that's a big deal. It's the training of the follow-on employee that you've got to go through. So that's what our director of accounting said was such a big deal for them is that they were cycling through people so fast that it was constantly training for constantly. And so now they have people that want to be doing it and they're doing it at a much higher level in a more exciting type of position. So yeah, in their cases, they were happy to go to other positions in the organization and do things that were more fulfilling for them.
Thank you. Anybody else?
What system are you using for the invoice?
There's a couple different ones that we use. It just depends on what the client need is. We're resellers of a couple different products. One of the products that we use is called Papervision. It's from a company called Digitech. They've got Papervision Capture, and then Papervision Enterprise is the document management side. So there's two elements to document processing. One is the capture piece, and one is the storage piece. Some people say, all I need to do is capture. I just want to get data off the documents, and then I'm going to put them in OneDrive or SharePoint or whatever. Right? I don't need a content management platform. Others say, hey, I really like the idea of having these workflows and approvals. I want the content management platform. Then I might use to move to Papervision, and they have another product called System. System is the one that's really leveraging a lot of AI, and actually will even use handwriting recognition with AI. You can put an image into System, and it will summarize the image. If you're a lawyer and you have a briefing there, it'll actually summarize the briefing for you. I mean, there's all kinds of things that we can do with that particular platform. But yeah, we partner with a company called Digitech is the main one that we work with. And there's other capture products that we use. It really depends on volume, capabilities, and the needs of the customer. Because some of them we can do as a subscription model where it's just all you can eat. Some of them are how many documents you processed. And then in the case of AI, a lot of times it's based upon the processes that you're doing, right? How many processes are you running it through is going to be determining the cost. So it just depends on the client as to what's the best fit. The all-you-can-eat plan that may not be as feature-rich, but it's one price, and you know what you're getting. Or if it's, I need to be a little more complex, I'm going to have a more variable plan because I might have to apply, 8 different AI queries to this particular document versus, 15 to that one. So it gets a little bit tricky depending on what the need is. But very simple one. We've got some products that just will go out there and look at the documents and use some AI to just be darn good, not amazing. And then we've got amazing, right? You've got different prices for darn good and different prices for amazing.
Anybody else?
I have a question. Have you encountered any issues with AI-generated invoices and things slipping in and being processed through? Because those are rampant out there. It seems like where they'll get in someone's email and fake an invoice back to you from a different person. What's your track record with those?
So what we're doing there is we don't eliminate the human element, right? We still have, so the client I was talking about, right? The way that they had their vendors separated was letters. Like A through D was Susie, E through H was Sally, whatever. And so they still have people the main part of AI for them is just grabbing the content off of there, right? And then from there, they're referencing, we do a three-way match, right? You're referencing an invoice to a PO. And if the PO doesn't match the invoice, then okay, that's a quick flag that says, hey, somebody needs to look at this. So we have error reporting that says, hey, something is not matching here, the check number, anybody that's the accounting knows obviously the three-way match, there's a check number, the invoice number, and the PO, right? But that's your three-way match. And so that's what we're doing a lot of times, but we're not 100% eliminating. Like I said, I didn't say we went from 6 to 0. We went from, a smaller number of employees. But they're still processing those invoices. But yes, there obviously is that out there. And, the good news is that we can build it versus off of a database they might have to say, okay, is this a valid? I mean, there's all kinds of things that we can get into. Is this a valid vendor or is it not? First of all, and then from there, is it the right remit to address and all the different things that people try to do, just like all the texts that we get and the phone calls that we get. It's ridiculous, of course, as we all know. So yeah.
All right, great. Thank you.
Good. Absolutely.
And again, we're going to do the panel later, so you'll have plenty of time to ask questions as well. Okay? Lee, do I have a seat? Up to you.
All right, so today what I am focused on is actually marketing. We're trying to keep this to be a pretty broad spectrum thing. We're talking about operations, we're talking about sales, and in my case, we're talking about marketing. So the way I'm gonna go through today is gonna be problem, solution, and most importantly, part number 3 is how you can actually take action on this, right? AI in action, that's what we're trying to do. But I do think we have to spend a moment of time to talk about the problem. So here's what I consider the problem today with marketing and AI. AI actually makes marketing a lot cheaper, all right? So bear with me. To use a simple example, when it comes to something like a blog post, it takes a human about $600 or so to write a blog post. And Carol, I know you've written quite a few blog posts for us. They're worth far more than that, but let's go ahead and say $610. Now you compare that to an AI written blog post, or more specifically, companies that are leveraging AI now, they're spending an average of $132 for an AI-driven blog post. So it's probably going to still have elements of a human writer, but they're leveraging AI. So that's a 4.7x decrease in cost per blog post. So again, how is this a problem? Sounds pretty good, right? The problem is this. So businesses that are using AI, you'd expect that they're spending less if content is less costly, right? They're actually spending more. The companies that are leveraging AI are spending more money on average per month than the ones who are not. So what this means is you have a lot more content being produced for the same, if not a larger budget. And the result of this is that individuals, we're all getting overloaded with content. If you've scrolled through your feed, if you've looked at cold emails going out to you, the point is it's a ton of new content. Have you all seen that? A little annoying, right? So here's the thing. I mean, I know this is a little bit harsh, but there's a lot of AI slop out there. There's a lot of not customized stuff that you just have some bots running and saying, oh, hi, XYZ person, you could use this and that, and they're spamming it, right? Or you think you're going to read a good blog article, it's not so valuable after all. But on the other end, if we put on our business owners or leaders hats, we are also having a problem, which is we don't want to spit out AI slop, but we want to differentiate ourselves in the market, and we have a ton of content out there. How the heck do we actually stand out with all the content out there? So in summary, the generic content is a lot easier to produce, but the effective marketing is seemingly harder because we have to do more to stand out than we did before. So how do we actually stand out and capture the attention of our ideal clients? Now, before I jump too deeply into the solution, I'm going to quickly explain who I am so you know if you want to listen to me or not, But basically, I'm a marketing strategist and I'm also a fractional executive, which just means I work for more than one company at a time and I help them with leadership. I'm formerly an Accenture consultant. That could be a good or a bad thing, depending on how you look at it. And oddly enough, I'm based in Bangkok, Thailand, so I'm over here for a trip right now, which I'm excited to be back home. But here's the thing. I work with businesses in the US, in Australia, in Thailand, in Malaysia. I work with a lot of companies around the globe. And the reason I think you might want to listen to me is because as much as I don't know everything by any means, I do get exposure to a lot of companies, to a lot of industries, to a lot of regions. And you start to see the patterns of what works for companies and what doesn't. There's a lot of challenges that companies are facing today, especially with marketing. I luckily get to see what's seemingly working. So how do we actually do AI and effective marketing in this AI world? Now, there's a ton of things that we can do. I'm going to keep it relatively simple into the 3 things that I think every business should be thinking about, okay? Number 1, we have videos. Number 2, we have a website. I assume everyone has a website here, right? I'm doubting, actually, let me raise your hand if in your business and anywhere in your business, let's say client-facing or public-facing, how many of you are using videos today? Can you raise your hand? Oh, wow. Okay, that's actually better than I thought. We might talk about that more in the panel. But videos are definitely something everyone's not doing, or maybe fully utilizing yet, but it seems like this crowd's quite good at that. Websites, and then there's social media. And I assume you all have LinkedIn accounts and stuff like that. Is that fair to say? Okay. So here's the case that I want to make and my recommendation that I'd have. In those 3 areas, this is a presentation about AI, right? But I think it's really important that you take a human-first approach. And instead of using AI on the front end, you're putting your face forward. You're taking the human connection and trying to stand out that way, but you're powering it using some AI. So on the back end, you're using AI to help you. Because the problem is if you're using AI and typing it in, hey, make me a video about this, or hey, send a cold email to a prospect about that, right? It's not going to turn out very well. But if you use AI in the back end, I think that you can actually do a pretty efficient job and have a much more effective process. So talking specifically about video, what are we talking about with video? Well, one way to do it is to record authentic videos that are providing value. Of course, how many of you watch YouTube? Actually, how many of you prefer YouTube over like reading, for instance? Any of you? All right. How many of you watch YouTube at 2x speed like me? Anyone else? Okay. Takes forever for people to get to the point, right? You all have to watch me at a regular everyday speed. But if you want to get the recording, maybe you can watch me at faster speed later. But we want to record authentic videos because I'm sure if you think about the people that you follow on YouTube, you probably like those people, probably trust those people. Otherwise, you wouldn't watch them. You subscribe to people that you know, like, and trust. And that's the beauty of having authentic videos. You're going to have imperfections. If you record a video, as soon as you have your team, for instance, put videos on YouTube, it's not going to be perfect. You're going to have ums, that's going to happen. But I'd argue that's essentially a benefit. That's not a negative side. Because if you see something that's too pristine, it's not going to stand out. It's going to look generic. You're not even going to know if it's real when you think about it. The videos are getting so good that they're all too perfect, and you start to say, is that a real person? Is that an avatar, right? So your imperfections are actually your strength, okay? But talking about AI, well, if I'm recording a video, which I'd argue, do it on your phone, do it on something like that. It doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to have the perfect lighting. But if you can record videos, then the question is, how do you leverage AI? Well, there's a few ways to do it. Here are a couple tools, and I will share this presentation so you don't necessarily have to write these down, but just FYI. Few tools that I really like are Otter AI. Now, you had mentioned, the AI bot that's joining the meetings, right? Microsoft meetings, Zoom meetings, whatever. Otter can join meetings. But Otter can also, do a voice transcription when you're on a walk, when you have an idea. I've got an idea for a video I want to create, and you're just, spitballing some ideas. Then you can go back to Otter, and you can say, hey, summarize it for me. Create me an outline of a video that I create based off all the stuff I just jabbed into for the last 30 minutes. So use Otter and Otter AI to help you. Another tool here is vidIQ. Now, for all of you that watch videos, if you've noticed that some of the video titles on YouTube are a little bit, they kind of try to catch your attention, right? A lot of that does have to do with, believe it or not, we click on those videos that have better titles. And so vidIQ will help you identify what video titles can I use, what things are people searching for, what are people in my industry that are creating videos, which ones are actually working really effectively. So it's kind of like a data analysis tool to help your videos be more effective. You also have Descript. Now, Carol is very familiar with Descript, aren't you?
I'm familiar. I'm not efficient, but I'm familiar.
Familiar. But it's much easier than it would be if we had you in Premiere Pro or something, I assume, right? So the point is Descript will allow you to take a video that you've created, to edit it more effectively, to transcribe it. And the beauty of it too, I'm sure you like this feature, Carol, is to say, those ums, delete them all, right? Or that start of it where, we're all getting the cameras ready and it's just saying generic stuff, instead of having to kind of figure out how to clip it, you literally select some text, click the delete button, and it's gone. So it's edit by text. That makes it easy for anyone to do, even Carol. And then you have Opus Clip. And Opus Clip, Descript does some of this too, but what it'll do is if you have a long form video and you realize, I need to package that up, I need to put it on social media, it'll allow you to say, well, this is an interesting clip, this is an interesting clip, you might like this, you might like that, click a button, it spits out your clips from your long form videos, okay? So very easy way to do that. What about the website? How do we leverage AI for the website? Well, first, we have to think, what do people care about when they visit a website? Now, in the past, I think it was very common that we say, again, we want our business to look bigger than it is. We want it to look amazing. We want to show a picture of the building. We want to show how many employees we have. We're huge. We're amazing. We're corporate, right? Where now, I think a lot of people go the other way. They say, I want to see the humans in your business. I want to see the people that are there. Don't make it look too shiny and pretty. Show the human beings. And so real team photos, FAQs, case studies, pricing details. People are very hesitant about pricing, and I get it. I think there are creative ways to do it where you're not saying this is our price, so everyone's worried about their competitors seeing their pricing and stuff. There are ways that you can do it, but the point is, when we all shop, do we care about pricing? Yeah. So guess what? Your customers do too, right? So if you want to say there's a price range or you want to say whatever, you can get creative with it, but if you don't have pricing details, you might be hurting yourself a little bit. Now, how does this relate to AI? Well, I'm saying to do human-first content on there, have real FAQ questions. Another one I want to point out there. If salespeople are on sales calls and people are asking questions, if you're able to record those, I know everyone's not able to record them, but if you're able to record them, you have a ton of FAQ questions. So maybe Otter AI or whatever is helping you extract that and saying, what are the patterns behind these sales calls? What questions are people asking? Let's put it on our website. If they're having the question for the sales guide, they're going to have the question when they're visiting our website. And so you have these FAQs. And here's the thing, and I think Liam will be touching on this a bit too. When ChatGPT and Perplexity are scanning your website and saying, should I recommend your business? They care about this stuff too, okay? They are literally saying, how credible is this company? Do they have team photos? Do they have an active social media account? Are they answering these questions that everyone's asking? Do they have a pricing page? Like the AI bots actually care about this stuff. Now, one quick word of warning for this. How many of you have actually gone into ChatGPT and typed in your own company and said, what do you think about my company? Raise your hand if you've done that. Yeah? Now, do you think it's giving you an accurate depiction? Yes or no? Accurate? Maybe, maybe not, right? AI loves to tell you what you want to hear. So if you've been doing things and creating content for yourself, and then you go back in to say, hey, how's MIS Solutions, right? How is it? It's going to say, oh, it's fantastic. Oh, it's amazing, because it knows the context. But when your prospects are doing that same search, they're getting a different result, okay? So this is where it's so important that you understand the distinction of what does AI care about, not when I do my own little test. When you go into an incognito window, it'll say something different, okay? So that's where I'm saying you have to have these trust factors on your website in order for AI to like what you are presenting. Now, speaking of that, there is an author and everything, and we'll talk about this later, that I do like, but someone who's very good at explaining this human connection stuff, has books on it and stuff, actually created a SaaS company that actually helps you assess how much AI will like your website, your content, and your online presence. And it's called AI Trust Signals. I'm sure it's like a paid subscription, but even just using like a free version of it will give you a good start. Take a look at it and see what it thinks of your online presence. And it's basically saying, what does AI think of what I have online, okay? So that's one of the best ways, because I could talk for hours about how to make a good website. I don't think it's gonna be worth it to you. Understand the concept though. Then the third thing that I have here is social media. How are you effective in social media in the world of AI? Well, we talked about one thing we don't wanna do, and that's throw out a whole bunch of AI slop. I wrote a new blog post that I created in 3 milliseconds because I used ChatGPT. It's not gonna cut it. So what we have to do is think about our online presence is about sharing client stories. It's about sharing team updates. It's about sharing maybe your opinion on a leadership topic. Hey, I just had this issue with employees that I hired or whatever it is. I found a new way to hire employees effectively. Owners and leaders should be sharing this stuff on social media, okay? It's awkward. It's difficult to do. I know, Liam, you and I have talked about that in the past. It's like, is it a little bit awkward to put a photo of yourself on social media sometimes? Do the selfie, right? It's not fun. You got to do it a little bit, right? Do it with what you're comfortable with. Show that you're a human being. That's what people care about, okay? Thought leadership is another thing. Of course, being a thought leader is not saying you're a thought leader. It's people seeing you online, seeing that you're presenting at events like this, seeing that you're out there doing stuff, and that's going to demonstrate to your audience that you know what you're talking about. How do you use AI to help you with this? Well, again, I think if you're doing thought leadership, maybe you can spitball ideas with ChatGPT or others to get some ideas on things you might want to talk about, but you do want to be thinking for yourself. Get some ideas, but then go for a walk and start spitballing some ideas to yourself. If you do that, well, I don't know about you all, but I'm not the best writer in the world. I might be really good at writing long paragraphs, but social media is not going to love my long paragraphs of text. So what you have to think about is, how do I package that for my audience? So I'm capturing the information. How do I make it sound better? Something like Hemingway Editor will allow you to do that. It says, keep this simple. Don't use that big word. Space this out. That's a tool that will help you a bit. Again, on the AI specific front, we have Sprout Social. This is a little bit similar to what I said with video, where this will kind of look online and say, what do my customers and potential clients care about, okay? And it'll start looking for those things and seeing trends in the market, which again, give you ideas of things you might want to post about, you might want to share, you might want to write a blog article about. But on social media, the point is this is going to help you get an idea what's out there. So the summary here is, I'm just trying to plant the seed. I want you to start thinking about the ways that you can leverage AI beyond ChatGPT. Think about how you can leverage it more in video. Think about how you can leverage it more with social media and with your website, okay? But the idea is it's not going to be perfect. You're going to have to use it. You're going to have to iterate. You're going to have to do some awkward stuff. When I say human first, right? Take the photos for the first time, or when you're at the airport and you're going to a conference, share that you're doing that, okay? Because it's showing that you're human, and it's showing the AI as well that it should be recommending you because you're doing stuff. Your competitors are probably going to create AI generic content. It's probably going to be generic. It's probably going to be forgettable. So the thing that's hard for you to do that you don't want to do, it's hard for your competitors. They're not going to do it. You're going to do it, right? So that's the way you're not forgettable. That's your advantage. So I'd encourage you to take action and actually do something about it. If you want to connect with me, by the way, you're welcome to do that. No obligation, but that's like LinkedIn and stuff. And the other thing that you might want is, like I said, you didn't need to write stuff down. The only thing this link is, whether it's a QR code or you go to fraction.io, be human, it's just a Google Drive link. It's just going to give you this presentation, no email address. I'm not selling you anything, just this presentation along with a guide to if you want to get started with some of the video stuff. I'll step you through a little bit of my process of how I do that. Okay, I do this in Otter, then I do this in this, and it's just going to step you through what I call the minimum viable video, starting off simple, and it's just a short, like, sort of PDF. And that's it for me. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Scott. I appreciate that. So I see some familiar faces. I see some new faces. For those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Lliam Holmes. I'm the CEO for MIS Solutions. The other thing you probably really want to know about me is I've been doing this about 30 years. I'm the tech guy. Like if you think about sales, marketing, production, the technical guys, I'm always on the bits and bytes, speeds, feeds, flashing lights. That's me. That's right. And so the concepts that I want to talk about are really going to be, I hope, transformational for you, but really around like, how do I take some of what we've heard Matt say, some of what we've heard Scott say, some of the things that you're probably thinking about, some of the things that you're seeing your peers talking about. How do I take that? How do I land the plane? How do I get this from, hey, this is a concept to like, what are we going to do? What are we going to do next, right? And so I'm very workshopy kind of guy. I'll actually show you exactly what we're doing. You're probably going to see some code. I know you guys are probably not developers, and that's okay. But my goal here is to really give you some good insights as to how do you get from point A to point B, okay? So through this, I want you to put one concept at the forefront of your mind. And I hope that by the end of this, you'll agree with my analogy. And that is, I believe we're entering a place where the value of the data in our databases, whether those are our ERP systems, whether those are our CRM systems, whether those are our EHR systems, our phone systems, whatever system you got. I believe that the value of the data in our systems has outgrown the value of the data or the value of the application that inputs the data. In other words, look at an ERP, look at all of the things that happen in manufacturing. There is tons and tons of data. There's inventories, there's rows, there's SKUs, there's order amounts. There's a lot of history as to who orders what, when, where, and what products, what different kinds of SKUs, how do they order, when do they order, what's the seasonality to that order. There's a lot of data there, right? And in fact, there's so much data in there that what you figure out is that most companies are using about 5% of the data that's actually in those databases. And for those of you who are on the data side of this, I know we have data analysts here. I know that we've got some other people who are doing some Tableau kinds of things as well. This may sound familiar in concept, and probably to many of you, right? How many of us, by show of hands, how many of us have systems, whether it's our accounting system, our HRIS system, our production system, whatever system it is, how many of us have all the reports we've ever wanted to answer every question we need in those systems? What? No hand raises? See, this is the problem, right? So most companies today, this little circle kind of feels a lot like this. Hey, business owner says, do we know how many widgets we sold last month? And, what's the supply chain on that? Because I heard the cost of steel is going up, and so I really want to understand what's that impact of our business going to look like? Gosh, we don't have that report. I could probably have Joey put together, an Excel spreadsheet, and I mean, we could probably get like close, but yeah, I don't know. But can you give us 2 weeks? Option one. Option two. you know, this is a pretty cool thing. We want to do this more often. What I could do is I could go to the vendor. The vendor could write a report for me. They could charge me to do the thing, right? And it's going to cost me $3,000. Maybe it's worth it. Maybe it's not. And inevitably, it seems to end up with option 3. You know, it's really not that important. We don't really have access to that data. I mean, I know I wish we did, but can we ballpark it? What do you think? Can we just get this thing on the runway? I mean, I think it's probably, I don't know, it's probably in this range maybe. Does that sound familiar? Right? That's like all of us, right? Because the reality of it is today, the only way that you get data out of your systems is by having people write reports for those that don't exist. And so if I was to say to you, where is the most valuable place that AI is actually injecting value into people's businesses? It's when you leverage AI in a secure, I'll raise my hand on that, in a secure manner to be able to answer ad hoc questions, to answer things that we all have about our business, right? I'll give you another example. I was working with a customer that they make ball bearings, not the bearings, just the balls, right? But they ship 20,000 pounds of ball bearings a day. Everything from the plastic ones that they put in paint cans to things that go in medical devices to big ones that go on trailer wheels and all kinds of crazy ones, right? Some of them are like 2,000 pounds. These things are huge, right? But they have 200,000 SKUs in their warehouse, right? And the question that they were asking me was, hey, you know, we get about 400, 500 orders a day. We've got all this stuff like everyone else, you know, in our warehouse slotted into rows and bins so that we know how to pick these orders, right? But we have guys who are literally all over the warehouse picking, you know, trying to find these SKUs and trying to, you know, fulfill orders and ship them. Wouldn't it be cool? Wouldn't it be nice? We have the data. Wouldn't it be nice if we could reorganize our warehouse to put our faster moving products up front, our slower moving products in the back, and to be able to dynamically understand how to do that? And by the way, if we could do that, while I'm thinking about it, you know what would really be cool too? Is to be able to take all of our orders that come in every day, look at every item that we have in inventory, automatically allocate those orders to our inventory to be able to increase our profit margin so that we are shipping as many complete orders as we can. Today, they have 3 people that do that by hand, right? And so here's some really great examples as to why I'm saying to you, the value of the data in your database is probably worth more than the application that runs it. So I started thinking about this, and I started thinking about what I'm seeing a lot of vendors doing. And, you know, a lot of vendors are going, hey, you know, we have XYZ product, comma, now we're AI enabled. Ooh, look at that, right? They add that at the end of everything. But you know what the disadvantage of this is going to be? The disadvantage of this is going to be that you're ending up with silos of data, right? Your HRIS company is going to have their own AI. Your production system is going to have their own AI. You're going to develop your own something or the other. They're going to have your own AI. Your accounting system, they want to get in the game too. Your phone system's going to want to get in the game. Everybody's going to get in the game, but it's going to be completely siloed and completely fractionated. I see that problem coming really fast, right? That's one thing. Second thing that I see is that if you look at what people are doing with AI, there's a lot of stuff that's going on out there that is got the AI tag that has no AI. There's no AI involved in the AI, if you will, right? But we have to be able to say that we've got these products that are doing these kinds of things, right? And so what I did was I was on vacation this summer, and I started thinking about this. I was out there by the pool having a great time. And I whipped out my laptop, and I started writing some code. And I wanted to be able to create a proof of concept that I could show you guys, hey, here's what I actually think the future looks like, right? Now, first of all, I'm going to tell you permission granted. This is a demo, this is a beta, like, I've got a couple 100 hours into this, but this is not a product and we are certainly not selling it. But I want to kind of really land this plane as to what that looks like, right? And so I'm going to grab a seat. You don't have to read any of that. Probably not a bad thing. All right, cool. So I created this little chatbot thing. And I wanted my chatbot to be not only multimodal, but I wanted it to be able to be database agnostic in a way that it would understand dialects of different databases, whether we're talking about Postgres, Oracle, SQL. I don't care. I want you to be able to figure that out, right? And I wanted to be able to attack the common problem of, yeah, but I don't want to expose my data to the internet, because that's a real problem. We don't need any of that. And so I thought about this problem. I said, you know what we really need to do? What we really need to do is to be able to create a database schema, right? A map of all of the tables and the fields and what do they mean and how they connect and all that works, right? By the way, I can do that automatically. I don't have to do that by hand. And then what I want to be able to do is I want to be able to do some prompt engineering. I want to be able to give some rules and like how we're going to work this thing out. And then what I want to do is I want to be able to take that prompt engineering and I want to be able to take that database schema and I want to be able to use some natural language processing, right? That question that we type in to ChatGPT or whatever it is, right? Like whatever it is. And I want to be able to understand the intent of that question. I want to be able to give that LLM a copy, not of my data, because we all know that's bad, but I want to give it a copy of the schema of my database. And I want to be able to give it some prompts and some engineers. And I want it instead to be able to write a SQL statement to me that I could then dynamically generate the answer to the question that you're asking based on the NLP input that you're putting in when you write your question. Does that make sense? And I would like for you to be able to understand all of the different kinds of databases so that I have a single pane of glass to be able to ask all of these questions to, right? Because we don't want to be able to go, oh, it's an HR question. I got to log into the HR system. It's an accounting question. I got to log into the accounting system, right? I really just want one interface, and I want that one interface to be able to answer every question I got. So I wrote this little example, right? So down at the bottom here, I can type in my little question. And I'm going to say, first of all, something simply like, how do I make pancakes? It's a totally legit question. Do not judge me. Okay? And I want to be able to take that, send it to the LLM, have it come back and say, okay, hey, look, here's some things here's a recipe, here's what you do, how it is, right? Now, why is this important? This is important because I'm proctoring this question. What does that mean? It means that I'm not going to ChatGPT and adding this question directly in as a prompt, because if I do that, I'm exposing my question. I'm exposing the kinds of data that my users are asking to the internet. That's all recorded and leveraged. Instead, what I'm doing is I'm doing this through a proctored session, an API that's protecting the data that I have internal. But yet I'm giving this kind of access to my staff that they can ask generic questions that they need. In other words, I'm providing them the tool without exposing the data, right? Ooh, that's not good. Things happen, right? So that's the one piece. The other piece that I had is I want to be able to say, okay, what if I did have direct system level questions, right? Okay, I can do that. Now, in my journey of writing this thing, as an example, you know what I learned really quickly? People do not know how to ask great questions. They come up with all kinds of crazy things, right? And even if you read it, you're like, even if you just said that to me, I wouldn't know what you were talking about. And what you realize really quickly is that people make a lot of assumptions about the questions that they ask. And so what I did was like, hey, I got this. I can figure this out. I'm going to create a recipe engine that goes with this, right? Because you know that old concept that says recall is easier than creation, right? And so I said, aha, let's figure that out. And so what I did was I said, all right, here's 3 different systems. One's on SQL, one's on Postgres, and 3CX, which is a phone system, it's actually on Postgres as well. And so if I pick one, I go, okay, here's some questions you might want to ask, right? And so then I can go in and I can say, okay, show me data based on this, automatically connect to my database, create that SQL statement based on the questions that you're, now I can type this if I want to as well, right? But this allows me now to have direct internal access to all of the data, but I can ask these questions by simply typing in a question. What do you want to know, right? Now all of a sudden, what have I done? I've unlocked what I believe to be the base problem, which is why I believe that the value of your data in your database is more valuable than the application itself. Because now I can ask, in our case, we're a service company, I can ask our ticketing system anything I want to know about tickets. I could ask 3CX anything I want to know about calls that came in. I could, for example, say, how many calls came in today? How many calls came to this person? How many outbound calls came today? How many calls do we get on Monday between 2 o'clock and 3 o'clock in the afternoon? Can you take all the calls that came in this week and could you break them out by day? Can you show me by time? But break it out 24 hours a day. I want to see, where's our highs, where's our lows, right? And I can start really literally making up questions that I might want to know the answer to. And if you kind of go right back to my original premise, today, how do I get access to that data? First of all, we have to decide, is it worth it? B, we're probably going to ask Joey to come and create us a spreadsheet. If we think it's something we really want, and we think we want it a lot of times, then we have somebody write us a report for us, or maybe we've hired somebody internally to write a report for us. Maybe the vendor will write that. Like, we're creating these little static solutions. But inevitably, it's really a fraction of the problem you're trying to solve. Because, in order to run a business efficiently, we have all kinds of questions. And a lot of the questions that we have are, hey, I'm just curious. Hey, I have just this one-time question. What is the average cost of an order? How long does it take from the time we enter that order in the system until the time that we ship it? How long does it take for us to fulfill it, right? How many stops did it take to fulfill that order? What was the average cost of that order? Hey, we've got this new ball bearing, whatever it is. I'm curious, from the time we place an order with the vendor until the time that ball bearing walks in the door, how long does it take? What's our back order point, right? And you think about ChatGPT and all the crazy things we all put in ChatGPT, me included. Imagine if you could ask all of your internal data systems that same level of questions. Our people would sit there all day and we'd just be asking hey, what about this? Hey, what about that? Hey, how many of these? How many of those? What's the average one of these? What's the average one of those, right? Think about the value that data now brings to your business. It's incredibly valuable, right? And I believe that we're going to have an inflection point that some of our large companies have already figured out years and years ago, but it's coming down to everyone else quickly. I'm going to use Facebook or LinkedIn as my example. Believe it or not, the largest purchaser of backup tapes globally, Facebook. Why? Because they recognize that the most valuable thing that they own is data, right? And so when we see what's going to be happening, think of this in a different way. I'm going to back away from that, for example. Think of this from a different way. How many of our vendors have come to us and said, hey, we've got our new application, whatever it may be. We have a hosted version of that. We have a web-based version of that. We have a subscription-based version of that, whatever that is, right? That was a really popular thing to do, right? Hey, you don't need to buy your own servers anymore. You can run our Great Plains in the cloud. You can run our QuickBooks in the cloud. You can run our HRS systems in the cloud. You can run our patient admission, whatever it may be, right? These guys have a tsunami of a problem that they haven't figured out yet. When it happens, remember me, right? Here's the problem. the value of the data in their databases are worth more to you than their application is to you. So what a lot of these companies have done is they've taken all this data, right? Think about Salesforce.com as an example, right? They've taken all their data and they have created multi-tenant, one database, lots of customers, right? Because it's scalable and efficient, right? And now AI is coming along and saying, hey, wait a minute. I want direct access to my database. I want direct access to my data because I now realize that that is more valuable to me than you are. Uh-oh, that's a problem. What are these companies going to do? Well, they've got some very limited options. One, don't worry, Mr. Customer, we have this new AI product. That's going to be knee-jerk reaction number one. You know, the problem with number one, though, is every vendor is going to do that. So every vendor is going to have their own AI thing, and you're going to have data spread out all over the place. Not going to work out. Option number two, you know, I hear you. We could create some APIs for you that you could use our APIs to access stuff. But you know what the problem with APIs is? If the data is this much, the API gives you access to that much, right? Again, I want to free-form ask any question I can think of to come up with whatever answer I have, and you don't even know, and I don't even know the question I'm going to ask before I type it in, right? APIs only give you access to a very small, curated part of the database. No, that's not going to work. Well, how about option C? You know what we could do? We could create a nightly export, and we could give you that nightly export, and you could import that into some of your system, and like, that'd be cool, right? That's not cool either. It's complicated. It takes a long time. If you can get away from it, it's not the way to go, right? If it's the only option you got, it's the only option you got. I think inevitably, though, all of these SaaS-based companies are going to come face to face with their customers saying, we are starting to recognize the value of our data that we've given you, and we want it back. It's happening to the point that we've now coined a phrase for it. It's called data repatronization. And so if you ever hear about somebody talking about data repatronization, that's what they're talking about. They're talking about, hey, I gave away my data, now I want it back. Because there's that recognition that the value of that data is actually more important than the application itself, okay? And so I think when you think about this, there's a balance. There is real value in the cloud. There is real value in saying, man, I don't have the people, the skill sets, the time, the effort, the energy, the whatever it is to manage all my servers and my stuff, right? And I think that that has always been that place for private cloud, right? Private cloud is, how do I get all the benefits of the cloud and yet still keep the benefits of having my own servers? And now we're adding that third leg, and I believe this is the nail to the coffin, and that nail to the coffin is, and by the way, I need my own data, my own private cloud so that I can access it, I can leverage AI in ways that bring value to our business that I can't get from anyone else. And by the way, I want to do that in a single pane of glass, right? Because we very, very shortly, 60 days, 90 days, 120 days, not more than that, we're about to move out of phase one for AI, and we're about to move into phase two. And phase two says this. When we talk about ChatGPT, what's happening? We ask questions, right? Does a great job of answering questions. Agentic AI, you're going to start hearing a lot about that. Agentic AI is the other way around. Agentic AI says that we have technology in the background that's looking at our data, and it's coming to us and telling us what it finds that we can take actions on based on rules that we've given it. Hey, tell me when we have a spike in orders. Tell me when we run low in inventory. Tell me when we see the average price of X go up, go down. Tell me when this customer who orders every 30 days hasn't ordered in 90 days, right? You tell me, because I'm going to forget to ask, right? That's agentic. We're 60, 90, 120 days from this moving into mainstream. And so I add this to the last piece of the puzzle, and then, I hope I have convinced you that your data is the most valuable thing that you own, right? But I think when you look at this, right, you're starting to see the dominoes line up, right? Where we're saying, hey, we have AI. Hey, I don't really know what to do with it. Hey, now I have some ideas what to do with it. Hey, we're going to have to make some changes. Hey, we're going to have to repatronate our data. Hey, now we're moving into agentic AI. And you string this all together, and I think what really becomes very clear is the longer you wait, the longer this chain is going to get, and you're going to get so far behind that it's going to be very difficult to catch up. And so I think that when you talk to people and you're saying, hey, how are you guys using AI? Talk to me a little bit about, what your thought process is behind that. I think the number one thing I hear when I talk to customers is, I don't really know what it is. I wish I knew what it is. Our customers, I think, know what it is. Our vendors, our competitors, they're putting time and effort and money on it. I'm scared if we don't do something, even if we fail, if we don't start doing something, we're going to be in the cold. And it's going to be hard for us to catch up, right? And that usually is followed by, hey, Liam, what do we do, right? And so, like we kind of said up front, like Carol said up front, not selling anything, I don't have anything to sell you, right? But what I hope I am doing is I hope I'm giving you some examples, some thoughts, some leadership, some ideas, some things that you can go and start to look in your business and you can say, I have a new thought, I have a new perspective, I have some ideas that I can go away and walk with, how are we going to play in this ecosystem? How do we understand this ecosystem? How are we going to be valuable to our clients? I'm very curious, by show of hands, how many of you did I convince, or maybe you walked in, you already knew this, but I'm just curious, how many of you believe that the data in your databases are in fact more valuable than the applications themselves? It's an easy sell, right, when you really think about it. And I'd say to you, that's really the undercurrent behind what is happening with AI. I'm just not sure everybody has recognized what it is today. Thank you, guys. I hope that was helpful.
All right, so any questions that you have about the way that they're using AI or general questions at all, floor is now open.
How, given with the directly about the DOB and precious things are companies, what do you recommend for companies when I was just sharing with my table when we have historically always said, our people are on first waving defense against malwares, spywares coming into email, and so that was really simple. Just training employees not to click that should be in. But now with AI, they have 100 points that they can go out to, whether it's chat, Copilot, Perplexity, whatever the AI tool that they're using is. Even if you can check off that box that says, don't use my data for modeling. What do you recommend, besides this training, to get them not to share the data? Like, instead, they had to read it, pushing it out, giving it away.
Yeah. So if you look at that chatbot example I gave you, right, where I have a proxied connection. I don't believe I don't believe that anybody should be putting anything in Chat GPT, Perplexity, Grok, Gemini, pick one. I don't think they should be putting any data in there that they wouldn't want to put on the front page of a newspaper, right? But I think that when you proctor access through a chatbot, it allows you to enforce those rules that you're saying to your employees, hey, don't do this, don't do that. Don't put social security numbers, credit card numbers, things like that, right? I think you have to have proctored access to these tools.
What if you're paying for the ChatGPT and clause? You have a subscreen, so it doesn't matter.
No protection. In fact, the government's going the other way around, and they're saying that, by law, just like with Apple, they not only have to record every prompt and every answer, but they actually have to make that available to the government at their discretion. Yes, ma'am. Even for paid accounts.
So how are, like, some industries where they're using underwriting or looking at medical records and things with a lot of personal information, how are they getting around putting that data out there? Who can get to it? Is that we can get access on the back end, or somebody get in?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, you know, the security aspect of it has clearly been a lightning rod of people, particularly when you're in a protected industry, whether that's, Department of Defense or healthcare or financial services, whatever you may be. And so all of these LLMs actually have the ability to allow you to download their LLM models, right? Now, that's great in the fact that, instead of going to chatgpt.com and putting in your stuff, you can actually download, that model and run it locally on a PC or a laptop or a server, however you want to do it, right? And for a lot of medical companies, that's what they're doing. However, there is a huge disadvantage to it, and that is that, these models are really expensive to train. On average, it takes about $6.5 million to train a basic model. And so what you see is that these models that you can download and run locally, think DeepSeek, that's probably one you can think of, right? These are legacy generation models. These are 1 and 2 generations old. So think about ChatGPT 3.5, 4. Those are the models that are available to download. But the latest models, 5, is not available to download, not available to buy, right? And so when you take into account how fast these models are evolving, the difference even between ChatGPT 4 and ChatGPT 5 is it's so significant that ChatGPT 4, is a tough one to run locally, right? And so what people are doing instead is they're saying, hey, we tried that was tough. But if we write applications that our users are putting data into that application, that chatbot is, scrubbing that data, anonymizing that data. It's using something creative, like, for example, providing the database schema as opposed to the data in the database, right? And then asking for something back. And you're using this, what's called a 1, 2, 3 proxy, right? I ask Scott, Scott asks Carol, Carol has the answer, Carol tells Scott, Scott tells me, kind of a thing, right? I'm able to protect the data. And that my chatbot was an example of that. And you're seeing that more and more, where people are saying, hey, we need to have access to the latest models, the latest tech, because we're trying to get on the leading edge of this, but we're really worried about exposing data, whether that's intellectual property or data that might be protected under some framework, right?
Anybody else have any questions? I actually have a question for you guys. And I would like to ask it each one. You said Matt will go first. For someone in the audience that's looking to bring AI into your business or department, what's the first step that you think they made?
For me, it's always about where's the most value, right? What's the biggest bottleneck in your organization right now? That's what I look at, right? If it's an AP process, if it's an HR hiring process, if it's a training process, I mean, that's, to me, number one. Where would I get? What's going to be the most bang for my buck in my bottlenecks? That's where I would start.
Yeah, I would say I'm really big into grassroots, right? I think sometimes when it's like a top down of a company, it's really hard to get the buy-in. So to me, it's a lot more about having those meetings with your company where you're really trying to extract who thinks that they could use it, how do they think they could use it. And the idea there is not that that's exactly how you're going to implement it, but I still think the first step is identifying where the problems are, identify the staff that are having trouble with this certain data or whatever it may be, or a department that's having a tough time with a lot of the compliance because they're worried about what their staff members are doing, you got to get everyone talking about that stuff first. And then I think you can start to set up policies and start rollouts and stuff. But it all starts, in my opinion, from the staff and the ground up, and optimizing, to your point, and finding out where the biggest pains are, because you can't do it all at once, right? So.
Yeah, I agree with both of you, but I'll probably give you another thought on that too. Fail small, start big, right? And what I mean by that is understand that when you're learning a new skill or you're bringing something new into your business, or when you're learning something, right? You don't go out and say, hey, I would like to learn a little bit about mathematics. Let's start with quantum physics. This is probably going to be a tough road. You're probably going to give up, right? And so I would say as an owner, find a problem that hurts. Find something that's not an artery, it's not blood flow to your company, right? And recognize that we are on a learning path. Recognize that bringing this new technology into your company is going to be a cultural shift as much as a technology shift, right? There are people that will not trust AI. There are people who are going to say, are you trying to take my job? There are people who are going to say, it doesn't take me long, I can just do it the old way, right? And so recognize very clearly that, there's a culture war that comes with this technology as well. Culture war, culture adoption, right? But it's going to require people to think differently, act differently, right? And so I think you want to find something that's small. I think you want to be able to have a success with something small. I think you want to build on those successes. You want to go through what we call the valley of despair. I don't know if anybody knows that analogy, right? But valley of despair is always like, hey, life is great. We're going to change something. Oh, life sucks. It's really bad. God, I've never seen it worse, right? People then kind of get used to that. Oh, it's not so bad. Oh, I really see why we did this. It's great. This is the best idea we've ever had, right? And so people have to go through this life cycle of, that technology adoption, that cultural adoption. So what I would say is that you want to be able to get a set of people who are going to be advocates for this new technology. You're going to want to find something small in your company to get started on. You're going to want to make sure that they're successful. You're going to want to make sure that it's public, that everybody gets to see like, wow, this is cool, this is great, this is a win, right? Because let's be honest, nobody wants to be on the losing team, right? And so, as people are getting success, I think what that does is it buys you enough leverage, it buys you enough equity to then say, hey guys, we've learned some lessons, we've built a culture of acceptance. Now what we're going to do is we're going to find that big, hairy, audacious problem, that thing that we've always known about, that elephant that no one wants to talk about, that thing that we know that would really move the needle if we could figure out how to solve that. Because you've built a culture of cheerleaders that will help you do that and evangelize that. If it was my company, that's probably where I'd start.
I wanted to add something that Liam said, going through the valley of despair. When I personally first started using AI to help with content creation, I felt like I was cheating. So there is a fear factor that you have to kind of get over that. This is way better. It's writing much better than I ever could.
Well, that's where the customization comes into play, right? Is that our marketing person comes to me and says, hey, I know I want to talk this techie thing, and he puts it into the AI bot, and I'm like, yeah, that's not even close to how I would have said it, right? So he thinks it sounds good, but in reality, I think to the point of some of the slides is that you've got to make it personalized, right? You've got to make it personalized. You've got to make it to where it sounds like you. It's kind of like what I said at the beginning. If it doesn't sound like you, when you show up and start talking, they're like, that wasn't really who was talking to me. And like, I think one of the slides that you had up there was, I made a note because I want to come back to it, was people are afraid to put pricing up there. And how do we get around putting pricing? But people expect pricing to be on a website. Well, some of the ways that I've seen it with some of our vendors is you can do an as low as or a starting at, right? So you can do either one of those, like as low as is going to give you that, hey, if I buy 10,000 of these things, it's as low as this, but it doesn't tell you what it starts at. Or the opposite of that is you give the highest price and, hey, there could be discounts for you, right? But that at least satisfies, I think, that goal that you had put up on your slide. And I've kind of made a note to come back to that, so.
One of the things that we share with you, specifically with content, websites, posters, those kind of things, AI provides some statistics. And I'm not actually certain if those statistics are correct. And so I've definitely gone back and asked, can you please give me the source of these? And so I've tried to do that. But if I ask them 3 different times, I might get 3 different statistics. So how do you marry using AI to help generate some of this, to provide you some of that information? I'm in the healthcare scheme, so I want to know what's the percentage of diabetics who have amputations. That's an important thing I need to know. It's part of how we, indicate and how we market our products or our services. How do you get to the truth?
I will defer to you eventually. I'll give a quick take on this, though. What do they call it? Hallucinations, right? So it means they lied and they made it up, right? And that happens quite a bit, right? We get bad data. To the point of what does AI care about to give credibility to your companies? Let me back into that. It cares that you are the source of data, okay? So I know that's the hardest thing to hear, but I think it goes a little bit back to what Lliam was talking about, is the data is the most valuable thing. Part of it is, can you flip it and say, is there a way that I can survey my clients? Is there a way that I can pull some information that's not confidential information from my database? Because that is huge, right? Because if you can write a report to say, we surveyed our 1,000 clients, we did this, put that data in there. Because as soon as you're using the data online, that's back to that regurgitation, right? Now we're pulling from someone else's source. Try to become the source of truth. Try to become the source of the information using the data that you have, okay? Now, I do think another area is, that's the hard answer, right? The easier answer, I think, is don't go into Grok or ChatGPT and ask, give me some stats on something. I do think there are some specialized tools that are a little bit better. I don't know, maybe, Lliam, you probably have the off-the-shelf solutions that are even probably better at this, but there are some that are really main toward doing research. You just have to know which tool to pick, right? And sometimes it's not going to be ChatGPT, sometimes it's going to be a different one. But I don't know if you have a take on that.
I probably have 2 thoughts on that. One is you can't use any data that's not verifiable, but they can't give the source, right? And you not only does it have to give you the source, but you should go read the source and make sure that, it's actually a credible source, right? I think that's the first thing. The second thing that I would say is, AI has some really interesting offshoots that are coming into this. And one of those offshoots is people who are curating, creating, and selling customized data sets, right? And actually, healthcare, financial services, security, compliance are 3 data sets that are actually being well serviced. So it's people who are going to NIH, it's people who are going to some of these other ERP systems and aggregating data and actually using that as a revenue source where they're selling that as a GPT model that plugs in that you can actually buy off the app stores now for ChatGPT is what I'm thinking about, right? That gives you access to some of these data models. And those data models, of course, they're all subscription-based, but they give you verified access to statistics like that. So that's the first thing I would say. The second thing I would say is, Scott and I was having this conversation yesterday, and for you guys who've known me a while, you guys probably remember my analogy around structural awareness versus situational awareness, right? And that analogy applies to so many things, so many areas, and believe it or not, I actually think it applies to AI as well, right? And so structural awareness is all of these sort of facts and figures and ideas and thoughts, right? But it is not situationally aware. It's just a collection of soup starter stuff. AI is very good at being, structurally aware, right? So for example, you could go into ChatGPT and you could say, we're a managed service provider, create me 20 memes that I could use in our marketing. And whoop, here's 20 memes. Now, the thing of it is, you have to be situationally aware. One, we don't sell some of those things. Two, we don't agree with half of those things, right? And three, they definitely don't sound like us, but you know what they are? They're really great thought-provoking ideas that make me say, hey, we don't do this, but we do that. Or, if you think this is good and this is what people are doing, I'm actually going to sell against that because I want to be able to educate why you shouldn't do that, right? So structurally, it gives me at least a place to start. I'm better than a blank sheet of paper, right? But I could take what it gives me and I can then, provide my experience. I can enhance that, enrich that thought, and then be able to provide something. And so, what I'd say to you is that AI is very structurally aware, but it requires the human being to be situationally aware about what, when, where, why to use what you're going to do and to modify it to fit your voice, your brand.
I think that could be tied to the prompts, right? Is that if you think about, just going back in time, when we had to do research, it was open an encyclopedia, right? And say, okay, well, you already know that that's at least a year dated, if not more, right? And so, I was that weird kid that had a junior encyclopedia. I read the stupid thing, right? I was like, I'm bored. Let me see, now this thing is even worse. And so, my dad was a research chemist, right? And so he did a lot of research. And so, X causes cancer, and he's like, Matt, here's the deal. I was part of that research team. He's like, the amount of saccharin that you would have to ingest was as if a mouse ate a truckload of saccharin to get cancer. That's what we had to basically feed these things, but they had to still put saccharin causes cancer, right? And so I think that a lot of that comes down to us either prompting and saying, hey, give me 5 sources, show me 5, because the studies are going to be different, right? Depending on who funded the studies is another, to the source of the study, who funded it? Was it the podiatry, people? Was it the GLP, folks? Who funded the study? So I think that we have to use that as part of our prompts and saying, hey, I want to know from X number of sources, what is the average percent of X, Y, Z, and that comes down to the prompting, I think. As we're using the AI. But back then we would have to say, okay, what does the encyclopedia say? Okay, now let me go to the library, pull up some. I'm really dating myself here. Some Laserfish, right? To see. But again, that's what we had to do, right? We had to, when I was in college, you had to go to the library and make copies and look at the newspaper articles from even 20, 30 years ago to kind of analyze and put them all together. And that's kind of what AI has helped us to do. But even it's not going to give you everything unless you ask for it the right way.
What's that, library?
I've never library. Yeah, it's very amazing thing. Of course,
Old book.
It's our fun.
The only difference is whatever's written in the Britannica, maybe it's not true today, but at least at one time it was true, right? Yeah.
The war thought it was true.
Well, I think that you have the taught at your school, and they're all specialized in what we're doing. Do you think it's better to use every single word there's abbreviations that we specialize in, or would it be better to find like one or two that are kind of that multiple things at once? And from there, how would you implement that into your multiple, a lot of writing pages from a 72-year-old agent compared to a 26 or 25-year-old agent that works in the same company? How would you implement that? But some individuals are more concerned or design.
That's a tough question.
I in some cases, people are just exempt, right? At a certain point, if you're, that person that is either that high up and or that close to retirement, shall we say, like in some of our print management things that we do, right? We go out and enforce secure print, but there's always going to be that one person that doesn't have to do it. They can just print to their printer, and it's okay, right? Because they're going to put up too much of a fit, or it's too difficult. They don't embrace technology, whatever. So I think that those people will weed themselves out, right? At a certain point, they're going to understand that they can't keep up. So either they're going to learn and adapt, or they're going to be left behind, and that's going to take the course of progress reports and all those different things that hey, you're not keeping up, you're not doing X, Y, Z that so-and-so is doing. Well, it's because you're not leveraging the technology, So I think that there's got to be there's a human element, right? There's not a cut and dry that says, hey, everybody must do this in certain cases, right? In certain cases, if they're getting the job done, fine, hands off, and I'm just not going to touch that one right now. And you let the people that want to leverage the technology, leverage it, and they're going to surpass those other people.
I'll give a short take, but I think, Liam, you're going to have a great take on this. I mean, my thought is, yes, there are specialized products. So there are tools that are better, things like logic than others, better coding than others, right? I still like the idea of keep it relatively simple, where you mentioned soup starters. I like the idea of having a kind of a go-to. And if you use that go-to, it's going to give you that soup starter, and then you can specialize. So I think if you are trying to get everyone trained on 7 different things, that's going to be really tough. But if it's like, if you're starting with one, maybe that's Grok, maybe that's ChatGPT, don't use that for the be-all, end-all, because you really do have to specialize at some point. But at least have kind of your go-to and then specialize. In fact, I think you could even go to ChatGPT if that was like your go-to and say, what is the best tool for this use case? And it might even direct you to the right one. So, but again, I'm curious, Liam, if you have a take.
Yeah, probably have several. First off, really great technology is technology that you use when you don't realize you're using it, right? Now, I'll give you a really good example. I use a Remarkable, one of those little notepad things. You guys probably see everybody use them, right? And the reason I like it is really simple. It tries to be a pencil and paper. That's it. That's all it does. Doesn't do anything more than that. There's no camera. There's no video recording stuff. There's no hard drive. It doesn't know what to do with PDF. Like it's a piece of paper, right? But if you look a little deeper, they've spent a lot of time, effort, and money making sure that when you pick up the pen and you write on the screen, it feels like you're picking up a regular pen and you're writing on a piece of paper, right? The screen's not shiny. It has that sort of paper feel to it, right? The eraser's on the other end of the pen, so when you want to erase it, you don't click an icon and highlight, and you turn the thing over and you erase it like you would with it, right? And so what they've done is they've spent a lot of time really thinking about how do we provide the technology without actually allowing the user to be hindered by the technology. And I think that that's probably a base for kind of taking that next step. And if you think about it today, we all use AI in all kinds of ways. Some of us recognize it, some of us don't. But they're all special purpose AIs, right? So for example, Google Maps, right? That's a specialized AI, right? You have that. You've got ChatGPT. You've got Spotify, which is making recommendations based on your listening patterns. So there's all these different products, but they're all silos, right? They're all specific, specialized things. And so this concept of AGI, right, is be able to say, I have one thing that can do lots of different things. We're not there yet. And the reason is because if you kind of go back to that thought I shared about structurally aware and being situationally aware, I need to be more situationally aware in order to have AGI, and that's why we don't have it, right? It's a difference between an anthill and Mount Everest, technically. Like these are not close, right? And so we're not going to see AGI soon. But if I dovetail that right back down to really specific about what you asked, I think that right now we haven't reached a saturation in the market where we are finding tools that are significantly better one than the other, right? And just when you do, somebody makes a release and now this one's better than that one, right? And so, for example, I use ChatGPT, and I actually use ChatGPT for helping me diagnose application flow and things like that. And for a long time, for a while, it was actually pretty good. But now every time I ask it a question, and it's a difficult question, man, that thing takes 5, 6, 7, 10, 20 minutes to come. I've already had 2 cups of coffee, right? And so I'm like, all right, I'm done with you, right? And so then you start looking at other things like Lovable and Grok and Perplexity and some of these things. And as these guys are all competing for something, what you tend to find is that this one's better today, this one's better tomorrow, this one's going to be better, but it isn't yet. This one flat out lied to me, right? So you're on the naughty list, right? And so I think that we're bouncing around. Now, one of the things I didn't demonstrate, and I'm happy to if I plug my laptop in, is one of the things I built for our sales group was this thought around how do we attract new clients, right? And I've always believed that, you attract clients based on people that you can identify with, people that you know, people that you've done a little bit of research with. You're not just dialing for dollars, and just randomly picking people, right? You need to have some situational awareness about who you're talking to, right? And so I took that concept and I said, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna take my little chatbot over there, and I want to be able to engineer a prompt that you can say, I'd like for you to create me a background report for this company that's in Swanee, Georgia, right? And what it'll do is it'll go in and it'll scrape their website. It'll go and look at their website and read it and say, okay, hey, what's their core values? When did they get founded? Tell me a little bit about their companies. Navigate down and show me, who their partners are, who are they connected to. Then, use a third-party service and be able to say, okay, I want to be able to look at all of the people who work at this company. Okay, great, cool. Now I have a list of who works at that company. Now what I want to do is I want to be able to go to LinkedIn. I want to be able to find everything I can find about everybody who works in that company. And then what I want to be able to do is I want to be able to look at their industry. I want to see what, industry groups that they're connected to. And then what I want to be able to do is I want you to actually look at my website, and I want you to be able to figure out who we are as a company. And then I want you to be able to look at all of our competitors that are within this geography, because we're all competing for the same business, right? And then what I want you to do is I want you to look at the customer. I want you to be able to look at our competitors. I want you to be able to look at us as a company. And I want you to be able to compare all three of us and then create a sales strategy as to how we would be able to take that company and turn them into a client. Right? None of this stuff is private. I didn't break any laws, promise. But what it does do is it allows you to leverage and utilize these different data sources and then be able to come back with, hey, here's a really, really great customer profile as to who they are, what they do, who their customers are, what their core values are, a short executive summary, right? And in this example, I'm using Perplexity, I'm using Gemini, I'm using ChatGPT, I'm using Grok, I'm using Apollo, I'm using LinkedIn, I'm using the SBA website, I'm using Dun & Bradstreet, and I'm iterating through all of this, and I'm cross-tabulating all of the information that I get to be able to weed out as many of those hallucinations as I can, so that when I get on the phone with that customer, if I was talking to Chase Burnett, for example, who's sitting in the back there, he just is like, hey, what are you talking about me for? I would know you went to Georgia Tech. I would know that you played for the Indians. I would know that you were a baseball player. I would know that, this is a third generation business. I would know that, Burnett was started in 1971. I would know how you got started. I would know that, Safeco funded the founder originally to start I would know a lot. I would probably know as much about your business, at least from a public persona, as you do. I might not even know more simply because I just read it, right? But what it does is it changes that interaction that we're going to have with that company, because, I'm not just trying to spray and pray. I'm really trying to understand and evaluate, is this a great prospect for us, and how would I, create a strategy to be able to turn them into something valuable? I think that in there probably somewhere lies the answer to your question, right?
Somewhere. Liam, I actually did the same thing. I created a tool just like you described. I did it this weekend. It was one actually quick nugget though. Your question was really hard when it results around how to roll something out to employees. But I do think when it comes to experimentation, just a small nugget that I think is helpful. There are aggregators out there, right? Just like with a flight aggregator, right? So I use one called citing.ai, and all it's doing is it's allowing me to say, let me see what Grok says. Let me see what ChatGPT does. Let me see what, I need a quick answer to your point. So I need like the fast version of it. And I can literally just go through with that same question and say, try that guy, try that guy. It beats kind of having all these different websites open. So I think you probably don't want to release that out to all of the staff and have them trying to doing that. But I'm just saying from a personal experimentation standpoint, it can be useful to see how each of the models is different. Because to your point, it's hard to keep up with it all. And it's kind of crazy how Claude, 5.1 is very different than, whatever. And just to be able to tick to the box is very, very helpful sometimes.
Speaking of, there is a sheet on your table in front of you that's got, I don't know if you've had a chance to look at it, it's got some of the top 10 AI tools on there with a brief description of how they work. So maybe that'll be helpful. And also the secret prompt, secret formula for successful prompts. So anyway, just want to try that.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm Chris from Radline. I think I kind of have like an aha moment here where I'm seeing how we can share our schema, but not the data itself, and have it generate the queries first that we use. I doubt that that's brilliant. But eventually, we have to have it analyze the results. And so my question really is bringing an LLM in-house or chatbot in-house really the only way to protect it when we'll start really doing deeper analysis? That we don't want to share even the results of the data. Not just
Tell you what I do. I'm not saying this is the way, I'm telling you it's a way. So what I do is I anonymize the data on the outflow. In other words, I take the data and instead of saying it's Burnett, I'm going to say you're company A, company B, company C. So I'll anonymize the data on the outflow, ask for the analysis. When the data comes back, I will reconstruct the data. So I get the analysis without the exposure.
Any other questions? All right, I'll have, how much time do we have left here? About 10 minutes? Okay. I want to ask a meta question of each of y'all. So what's one AI use case or AI use case you're excited to explore next that you haven't implemented yet? You're thinking, Harrison.
Tell for all circle there. So I can think this time.
And it works. So the one thing for us that, gosh, there's probably so many things, but I took our phone system and I took all of the call recordings, transcribed those, and then started looking at how to do call sentiment analysis, right? So if we get a call on the support desk, I want to be able to take a recording of that call, transcribe it, get the sentiment. Sentiment is a score like from 1 to 5. 5 stars great, 1 star not so great, right? And to be able to say, hey, anytime that we get a sentiment analysis that's 3 or below, there's a workflow that kicks off that automatically notifies our service manager to go and listen to that call and to be able to understand what happened. And I'll tell you, I did some of that, but I kind of did it the manual way, meaning that I wrote the code, but it doesn't do it automatically, right? It's kind of broken out into little bits and pieces. But in doing that, what I found for us was that when we are live on the phone with customers, I think our guys do a great job, right? And we're getting call sentiment analysis that are solid 4s and 5s. When our guys are calling our clients and they're leaving voicemail, all of a sudden we're getting more 3s show up in that mix, right? And so one of the things that kind of pointed us to in recognizing was being able to train our internal staff around the fact that leaving a voicemail leaves that same customer impression as when you have a live answer. You need to be as professional as, I don't know what you want to call it, right? When you're leaving a voicemail as you are when you're actually speaking to a customer. So, that was a trend that we uncovered in doing that, but, we don't yet have that in place. That's something that we're working on that we think would be valuable to us.
I'll tell you a bit of a strange one, but I mentioned briefly that I currently live in Thailand, have a family there, etc. And language, let me tell you, Thai is not an easy language to learn. I'm not sure if you've heard of tonal languages, but the idea is ma, 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 ma. Those are all very different words, despite being MA in English, right? So basically, language learning, I think, is very interesting because a tonal language, how do you teach that, right? How do you teach it? And when you think about Rosetta Stone or all these other, and I'll tie this back to business a little bit more, but if you try to learn that way, you're trying to like books on tape sort of stuff, right? Or not books on tape, but like audio on tape, like let me try to get that sound right. what I think is amazing, and this actually reminds me of something you and I have discussed, is like we have to turn the, you were saying that like the scope around, telescope around, and basically instead of thinking, let me shout at like how to learn something, right? I think AI switches that, right? As you've said, where it's more like, how do you learn? How do you learn? How do you learn? How do you learn? What language do you know? Oh, you know Spanish. I can teach you Thai in a different way because you know Spanish and English, whereas someone else knows a Malay or whatever, and that they learn differently. And so I think what AI is going to allow us to do, and I know it already does. I know someone here in Bangkok that already developed this. He was using something similar. Yeah, a lot of what you were doing, Liam, is similar. It's tapping into it exists, but he developed a tool that allowed you to see the tones. It allowed you to see how you can learn and adapt it to the individual that's learning, right? And so in my mind, it actually goes back to this gentleman's question where you were talking about how do you teach the 70-year-old that to do a certain thing. I think AI is actually going to get way better at teaching the 70-year-old and the 7-year-old because they all learn differently. And so instead of being like, oh, we need to roll out a training program for everyone who all learns differently, that is what I'm really curious. And it's not that I'm going to be implementing tomorrow, but I really want to tap more into that. How are we going to get better at teaching people in the way that they learn best? I think AI is really going to empower us to do that.
So I think for me, it's going to be lead generation, right? We get so much data from our customers. We get so much survey responses, you know, what was the problem that they called for? And a lot of times those problems could be a solution that, you know, my team sells that the customer is not even aware of because maybe the sales rep didn't do their job and didn't, you know, have us on the quarterly business review or the annual business review about here's the latest, greatest trends in our industry. There's a lot of data that we're getting in from service calls from, you know, from our service team that right now it's a very manual process that maybe I might get a blip of a, hey, these guys might be interested in that software. I just thought about that might be a thing for you guys. Automating that process and actually giving us, you know, my team leads based upon what kind of service history we're getting. I think that, like to your point, the data is so valuable that we are just not even leveraging it. So that would be the big thing for us.
Okay. Well, guys, thank you very much. You guys feel like you got some value out of today's session?
Yeah.